Dude, I cannot think of a draft, an NBA draft with less juice than the one we're heading into.
No real stars in it.
Like, it's a tough year for the NBA casuals, I will say.
Yeah.
Because overall it was not a great postseason. I think I copped to that as soon as the Celtics won the title. It was not a very entertaining postseason. It wasn't a wildly entertaining finals for the casuals. Even those who weren't rooting for the teams that were like, wow, the Celtics team is great. Then there's some intrigue there. But it wasn't a great final series, just like it wasn't last year. The year before was okay, 22 Celtics Warriors. But just overall, not a hugely wildly entertaining postseason for one that saw a 5 seed get to the finals, by the way. Just wasn't much to it, right? And now here you go, NBA draft. No generational talent that we can see coming into it. And I'm trying to get prepared for this draft, Braden, and I keep looking at mock drafts, and they're all different.
Yeah.
Nothing is in any way uniform. I saw one the other day that still had Donovan Clingan as the first pick.
Wow.
And then I'm seeing a bunch more that have him at 6 or 7, which is probably where he is going to end up. And one that's like, hey, this isn't a center. It's not going to be a great center draft. He might drop down into the teens. It's like, I don't know where to go with this. This morning, before doing this segment, I had to double check with people that I'm hoping are right on how to say the last name of the guy who's going to be taken first. Was it Richard?
I think so, what he said.
I don't even know. Alex Sarr. And both of them are just they're pretty good guys. 3-and-D.
Well, I really like
number 1 pick in the draft? Okay.
I really like that on the Ringer. The player comp for Richard is Harrison Barnes and Tobias Harris. And then
number 1 in the draft.
Number 4 player, Bazulis, Franz Wagner, and Lamar Odom. Those are his player comps.
It's one of those things where, in retrospect, if you picked a guy 4th that ended up becoming Lamar Odom, okay, because there's a lot that become busts, right? Yeah. But when you're looking towards who you're going to pick, that's not exactly the upside you're trying to get.
Yeah, with the number 1 overall pick.
Who do they have it for Sarr? Who's Sarr's? Because I have to click an extra one.
Nick Claxton and Jaren Jackson Jr.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Nick Claxton shoots a high percent and a good defender. Oh, man, but is that who you want? Reed Shepherd, by the way, who is picked 3rd in the Ringer one.
Yeah.
Derek White, Steve Nash. That's not bad.
That's not bad. That's pretty good.
So this is just a weird draft. For Clingan, they have Rudy Gobert or Marc Gasol.
So both pretty good.
Which most
players.
years I'd pick that number 1.
Yeah.
And obviously these are shades of guys, right? Not huge. Stephon Castle, Andre Iguodala. This is a weird draft, man. There's no consensus number 1, let alone a consensus generational guy. I'm thinking in my lifetime, I was a little too young for LeBron, but obviously Zion really high up. Wembanyama's probably number 1 in terms of the phenom since LeBron. Kyrie had huge draft hype for a guy who only played 11 games in college. Anthony Davis had pretty legit ones, but those guys are the ones that stand out.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's another draft in my lifetime that really reminds me a lot of this 2024. That draft that reminds me of 2024 is the 2013 draft.
Yeah.
You remember this? This is probably right when you're getting into it.
Right, yeah. A couple years before.
This draft fucking sucked. And it knew it was going to suck from the beginning, really. It was so similar to this year in that there was no clear-cut number 1. There was no, high floors, I would say. Mm-hmm. A lot of high ceilings, not a lot of high floors. And it turned out to be that way big time. So do you remember who the first pick in the draft was?
It was Anthony Bennett.
Anthony Bennett from UNLV. Never averaged more than 5 points a game in the NBA.
Yeah.
Was out after 4 years. That's arguably the biggest draft bust in history.
Yeah.
Like, that's right up there, man. And had some injuries, but we're not talking Greg Oden here. We're talking a guy who really sucked and also wasn't in shape. Number 2, Victor Oladipo, baby. Fine player.
Yeah, he was good
Got
for a
hurt
while.
at the end of his career. Effective player, not really with Orlando, who picked him. And then, oh my God, you just go down this list. Otto Porter Jr., Cody Zeller, Alex Len,
Nerlens
Noel, who was the consensus number 1 before his year at Kentucky. Do you remember Nerlens Noel at all? He
I
got
know
hurt
more of
in
his
college.
NBA career.
So he was like because I remember this as like a 15-year-old, and I was like, I'm no draft expert, obviously, but what is the appeal with this guy again? As someone I should be rooting for because he's from Massachusetts and went to Tilton or Brewster in New Hampshire, and I was like, he's a athletic guy who can bring the ball up sometimes and blocks shots. That's what he is, and that's essentially what he was. He couldn't shoot. He wasn't really a ball handler in the NBA. He was a rim runner that wasn't big enough to be a center, a.k.a. completely fucking useless. Ben McLemore was McLemore before Thrift Shop, dude. That was the McLemore you thought of. He was big time
He had a decent year.
At Kansas, huh?
He had a decent year with the Rockets a couple of years ago. That's what I remember him for.
Really? Good for him. So we get to pick, what is that, 8 here? 3, 6, 8 to get like a contributing role player in KCP, Kentavious Caldwell Pope. Like a guy who was a role player on a championship team. Trey Burke, College Player of the Year. Nope. CJ McCollum, good player. Michael Carter-Williams, Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year. Michael Carter-Williams, who then did just nothing after that. Another Massachusetts guy, by the way. Steven Adams, good pick.
Yeah.
You see that 13th overall?
I do see 13th overall.
Technically picked by Dallas, but was drafted by the Celtics. Kelly Olynyk. Which at 13 overall to get a role player like Kelly Olynyk, not bad.
Yeah.
But then you see who was 2 picks later?
I do see your number.
You got that in front of you? Tell me who was 2 picks later.
Giannis Antetokounmpo, number 15.
Yeah.
Even Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, at 17. That's not bad. But you have to
yeah.
go to 15 to get the best player in your draft. By far the best player in the draft, right? Like he's still a top 5, top 6 player in the league right now, 11 years later, and a first ballot Hall of Famer. But 15, I mean, they're just like, shit, man. Someone took Shabazz Muhammad. I guess we got to go with the project. Not the sure thing, like Shabazz Muhammad. Oh, we were really looking for a tall ball handler. That's why we wanted Michael Carter-Williams, but he's off the board. Guess we got to go with Giannis. Oh, man, the rest of this is just terrible. Tony Snell gets picked a few picks later, but Gorgie Jang, Mason Plumlee, Tim Hardaway Jr., not a bad value
Reggie
pick.
Bullock.
Gobert is at the end of the first round. At 27. Giannis at 15 and Gobert at 27. And Anthony Bennett's taking number 1. I know hindsight is 20/20, but come on, guys. We got to look better than that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not great.
And this is a franchise, by the way, in Cleveland that had nailed their other 2 number 1 picks, LeBron and Kyrie. Then they drafted Anthony Bennett. And essentially drafted Kevin Love first overall the next year because they traded the Wiggins pick. Oh, my God, man. Who are these guys? Jeff Withey from Kansas. Pierre Jackson, Baylor Bear. Hell yeah.
Another bad one that I remember. We didn't talk about this beforehand.
There's been a couple.
The 2015 draft was the first one that I really watched. And that's Karl Anthony Towns,
yeah,
Jahlil
but then
Okafor.
the next 2 at least are disasters.
Yeah.
D'Angelo Russell, who has a couple decent years in the league, not really for the Lakers. And then Jahlil Okafor, man.
I remember he was
What a bust that was.
He was a big deal coming out of college.
I mean, he was one of those who was like, if you still had the high school rule, he'd be number 1 in the draft. Goes to Duke, wins the national championship. But I remember that Duke team had to play zone because Jahlil could not defend. And lo and behold, he gets to the NBA. He can't defend. And he was out of the league in short order. Man,
Yep.
I don't...
Yep.
Do you have his page in front of you?
I do now.
Who did he play for outside of Philly? I think he got one shot after that.
He played for Brooklyn in 2017-18, and then the Pelicans
Worst
from
in the
18
Okay,
20,
so he got a couple of shots.
and then Detroit 20 to 21.
Playing in China now?
I don't know.
By the way, I mean, just 3 terrible teams in a row.
Can I read you his nicknames on Basketball Reference?
Yes, please.
Ja.
Yep.
Ja.
Yep.
Big J.
Okay.
My favorite. Little Sully.
Like Jared Sullinger?
I guess so. Little Sully.
He was a poor man's Jared Sullinger, which is a sad thing to say about someone, let alone taking number 3 in the draft. Give me some of the other top 10 in that 2015, because I mean, Cat is a really good player, so that knocks out of the 2013 range, but it's close.
Kristaps at 4.
Okay, that's not a bad pick.
I don't know. Willie Cauley-Stein at 6. Emmanuel Mudiay.
Yikes.
Frank Kaminsky at 9.
Oh my God, yes. And this is so funny to look back on now, but that was the draft. The Celtics wanted to trade up at the 9 spot to Charlotte so they could draft Justice Winslow from Duke. And they offered like 2 future first-round picks, and Charlotte said no to pick Frank Kaminsky. Now, Justice Winslow also turns out to be nothing, but man, that was hilarious at the time. Where did Winslow go, like 12?
He was 10 right after.
Okay, 10.
I was
Miami?
a big Winslow guy because I saw him play in high school.
I was a big... Okay, yeah, he's a Houston area guy.
Yeah. So I was always following him throughout college, and I was like, okay, Justice, here we go. And he didn't pan out. And
it's still unbelievable he didn't, because the game was so changing towards athletic wings who could shoot. And he wasn't like a great shooter, but he could shoot it. And he just never... Like, he should have been a quintessential 3-and-D guy.
Kept getting injured.
Yeah, that was tough. But I think about I love bad drafts, man, because I've seen a lot of it recently with the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum screenshots of those top 4. It was the same top 4 order-wise 2 years in a row. So it was Philly, Lakers, Celtics, Suns. And so the first year it was Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, and then Dragon Bender. And then 17, it's Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, poor Lonzo Ball. No.
Yeah.
Weird injuries. Jason Tatum, and then Josh Jackson from Kansas, who was just a complete nothing, just a total nothing. That was such a Nerlens Noel pick. Or honestly, also like a Marcus Smart pick. Now, Marcus Smart turned out to be something.
Yeah.
But it was like, hey, this guy, it's more like Nerlens Noel. Like, he's got a wingspan. He can defend a couple different positions. His shot is absolutely terrible, but we can work on it. No, you can't. No, you can't. Turns out he couldn't really defend at the next level either. Oh, I love a bad NBA draft. That's why I am going to be hooked in on Wednesday. Because I don't really care much about this draft. But
yeah.
Braden, who do you want? What do the Rockets have? Third? Who do you want?
I don't know.
And does it annoy you that this is such a shitty draft?
I'm fine with whoever they have for us. Reed Shepherd. No,
that would be a good. I like a Reed Shepherd, Stephon Castle.
Yeah.
In that 3 through 6, I really like both of them, which means one of them's going to be pretty good and one of them's going to be a total bust.
Do you want to hear what Jacoby and Eve's player comps were?
Sure, yeah. Jacoby Walter and Yves Messi from Baylor, yeah.
So Jacoby Walter, he has him at 19 of the Raptors, and he says shades of Chris Middleton.
Yeah. I think that would be a good best-case scenario for him.
And then 21, Eve.
Kind of a long guy who could still shoot and play some defense.
Eve to the Pelicans at 21, Jalen Duren.
Yeah, I think Eve compared himself to that. I hear a lot of Clint Capella.
Right.
I think he could be not going to be right away. He's really young and really raw, but I think he could be one of the best rim runners and rim protectors in the league in a couple of years. I really do. I think that's a good ceiling for him. Can I share with you some embarrassing draft takes that I've made over the years?
Go ahead.
And I'm being honest about this because no one can back it up. But I am one of those guys who loves to be like, oh no, you should pick this guy who's supposed to be number 2 instead of this guy you're going to pick at number 1. Now, I did famously say that to some people as a 10-year-old about Kevin Durant over Greg Oden, and turned out to be incredibly fucking right about it. No big deal. But then my track record ran dry a little bit. 2010, I said you should pick the number 2 guy over number 1, which means I said you should pick Evan Turner over John Wall.
Oh.
Not my best work. 2012, I said you should pick number 2 over number 1, which means, Braden, I said you should pick Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, not good. Anthony Davis. That would be stupid. That was a humongous miss. And I don't know that I've done it too convincingly since. I was worried that R.J. Barrett was going to be a better player than Zion because of the injury thing.
I was too.
Which is kind of true. I mean, Zion's a really effective player when he's out there, and R.J. Barrett's a pretty good player. Pretty solid player. Couldn't earn a second contract from his team that's now contending, but solid player.
Do you remember in 2020 when people were like, but does Anthony Edwards care about basketball enough to take him number 1 overall?
Yes.
I wasn't buying that narrative.
Well, I'm always worried about guys who don't win in college. Mm-hmm. And I know it's different strokes for different folks, but I do always worry about that. And I will say I was not on the Markelle Fultz train whatsoever. I would have rather the Celtics have picked Lonzo Ball, which I was on that train for a minute, which also would have been a disaster, right? But once they got that number 1, I was like, they're not drafting Markelle Fultz. There's just no way. And everything coming out of the Celtics camp was they don't really love Fultz. And still they were able to fleece Philly and trade that pick and just get the guy they wanted anyway at 3. And win an NBA championship. Do you have any hot takes from the past that you remember going very poorly?
I don't think so.
Draft?
Not for the NBA draft, no.
What was that Gottlieb one? That was I don't see the Curry thing. I think Jeff Teague and Johnny Flynn have way better upside.
Wow, no.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. I was, in 2016, I'll throw myself under the bus a little bit again. I was not mad, but very confused with the Jaylen Brown pick. That was another weird draft too. Outside of the top 2, it was kind of all over the place. And Brown was picked somewhere between 7 and 11, and the Celtics drafted him 3rd. And I was like, man, you could have had Chris Dunn. What are you doing? Chris Dunn, this Providence superstar. And the other one that a lot of Celtics fans wanted was Jamal Murray, so that would have turned out okay too.
I will say I was pretty skeptical of Chet Holmgren coming in.
Yeah? Where did he get selected? 2?
2. I just thought that he would always be injured, and he was injured his rookie year.
Yeah, so. I mean, jury's still out. He made it through this year and played really well. But he got to wonder with that body type. For every, one Banyama that's like that, there's an Alex Len that's like that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Giannis bulked up. Tatum bulked up. Ingram didn't, and he's an okay player. Anyway, you think Jalen Bridges can slip to the Celtics?
It's entirely possible.
55? Yves Missi, dude. Sports Illustrated have Yves Missi going 30th to the Celtics. That would be a steal.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolute steal. I'm just telling you now. Anyway, who do you want the Rockets to pick? Did you tell me?
Reed Shepherd.
Reed Shepherd. Okay, we're settled on Reed Shepherd. That'd be a good pick. Probably the most polished player in the draft.
Yep.
We'll find out.
We are are Rogue Media Sports.